Kelly Fair, thank you so much for being here. I know that you, for years, decades, have been investing in business professionals, nonprofit leaders, and really helping them with coaching, consulting, find clarity in their purpose and how to lead well. I know that you're accredited both in Enneagram and DISC, and you're also one of our leaders at Grace Gathering Central. So very excited. And then between you and I, we've just had lots of conversations over the years that have been genuinely helpful in my own journey. So just want to start by saying thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for the invite. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this week, the topic is fear. Mm-hmm. And I thought it'd be helpful to just, by getting started, could you kind of lay the groundwork for what fear is, how it manifests, and even some definitions and background?
Sure. We could probably fill legal pads full of all the very real issues that has us concerned at any given day, any given moment with our families or our work or whatever it is, our kids. And so those concerns, as we deal with those things and we have decisions to make, all of that starts to weigh on us. And oftentimes trigger this sense of fear and even anxiety about what's going to happen if I make the wrong decision, or what do we need to do if, or what if this, or if that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just very natural for that to happen. The problem is, if fear and anxiety go unchecked, then it starts to just eat up all the space in our brain and our emotions, all of that. It starts to derail our thinking. It shuts us down emotionally, all of that kind of stuff. And we start reacting to fight, flight, or freeze, which is the more primitive parts of our brains kick in, and we start making decisions and things out of our fear and anxiety as opposed to clear, level-headedness and clear thinking. And even makes it harder for us to be able to dial in and hear what it is God is saying and what he wants us to do about it, as opposed to all these clamoring voices of fear and anxiety in our head.
Oh, wow.
What we try to do in a moment is we try to ignore it. We try to numb out, check out. I'll go watch something else on TV, like the Great British Bake Off. That makes me feel good.
Anything
whatever.
we can do to just escape out of the things that are causing us fear. Yeah,
exactly. Or we go the other way, and we're going to try to power it through it. We're going to control it. We're going to fix it. We're going to just push through it. Either way, fear and anxiety ends up kind of running the show. We're reacting. Either way, we're reacting to the things that we're afraid of or that we're anxious about. And in the process, it starts to shape our perspective, and we start to see things differently. And then we feel like we're captive. We feel like we're stuck. What else can we do? Romans 8:15, which I love, says, "For you've not received a spirit that makes you fearful, slaves. Instead, you've received God's Spirit when he adopted you as his own children." And so what that reminds me of is, in my flesh, in my human nature, I go this way when I'm afraid. I'm panicky. But in my nature that God has given me through Christ, I have another choice I can make. I have another set of options available to me. And this new nature allows me to make a choice in a different direction than the one I might ordinarily go.
Yeah. Yeah, so fear and anxiety, something that just about everyone experiences, cause us to ask a bunch of questions that kind of spiral into out of control and kind of take captive our thoughts. They start, driving the bus. You mentioned at the end that the good news is that Christ has given us not a spirit of fear, but his Spirit, which is awesome. But then I hear something different from some people. They'll start to question, well, if I'm a Christian, I shouldn't experience fear. Or if I follow Jesus, I read the Bible, I pray, I shouldn't ever experience anxiety. So then when they do feel these things, they start to wonder, is something wrong with me? Have I done something wrong? Why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
Could you help us process that a little?
Yeah, fear is part of being human. The Father created us with these complex emotions, basic emotions, things like joy and anger and sadness and disgust and surprise and fear. He created us with all of this range of emotions, and being fully human as we are, like we have any other choice, being fully human means we've experienced the full range of every emotion that God planted in us, including fear. So this is how I think about it. Jesus, the scriptures tell us that Jesus was fully human. He's fully God, fully man, right? So he's fully human, which means he has experienced everything that we will have experienced in life. With the exception of sin, he resisted temptation and did not sin. That's the only point where we don't identify with him or he with us in that way. Otherwise, every emotion, every thought we've ever had, every behavior or whatever, that pattern of behavior that Jesus has, we identify with him. And that includes fear. The reason I say that is I think of the night that he was arrested. So he's gathered with his disciples and they're hanging out praying. It's his very close guys, his closest friends. And he is in agony. We hear that he's up in the Garden of Olives and he is in agony as he's seeing what is to come. Anticipating the suffering that is to come, anticipating the weight of the world, past, present, and future, and all of the sin of the world being put on his shoulders. And in his most human moment that I see in Scripture at some point, he says in his prayer with God, with his Father, he says, "If you're willing, take this cup from me." And I pause there. There is just so much that is just loaded. I mean, we just know Jesus is suffering as he's anticipating suffering. And I think, man, he's dreading it. He's fearful of it. It's like, who would choose that?
Right.
He's having this natural emotional reaction to what he's about to do. And he's aware of his mission. This was the thing he was created for. And yet, in his humanity, he says in this moment, God, if you're willing, let this cup pass.
His body's doing the fight or flight thing.
Yeah. Sweating, great, drop. You read that.
Yeah.
It's just all happening right there. But there's this moment where it turns, where he says, "Yet not my will, but yours." And so there's this battle, this moment where Jesus expresses fully his fear, his dread, all of that. And then he yields and obeys the Father and willingly receives that. He willingly drinks from that cup. And to me, that's just really powerful of he's having the emotions, he's having the thinking, he's experiencing all of this, yet as he faces it, as he deals with it, as he expresses it to the Father, he's also able to choose something different and not react to it.
Wow. So it's okay that we sometimes experience fear, because even Jesus experienced fear.
Yeah.
Now, are fear and anxiety the same thing, or are they different?
Okay, they're different. Fear is an external. It's a response towards an external reality that our five senses have picked up on. Danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah.
So we start to pick up on the fact, we are being threatened right now. There's something that's happening, and so I need to make a decision about something that's really serious, about a health care issue or whatever, and I can't mess around on this. It's a threat to my survival. And so fear literally moves me into action to do something about that. Anxiety is similar, but it's different. They both have similar physiological reactions, but anxiety, man, it's a internal response towards our internal emotions and thoughts and feelings. And it's not something that moves us into action. It actually suppresses action. It's a stop response.
Okay.
So in trying to outrun our thoughts and trying to ignore our emotions or our own needs that our body's saying, you need to face this, we actually shut it down or try to, and then the anxiety just grows exponentially. And it feels just overwhelming.
Wow. So fear, good emotion that helps us respond to external threats. Anxiety is a response to internal threats based kind of on questions of, what if or things like that. At what point does anxiety cross a threshold into, a clinical disorder versus just something that I think about or deal with sometimes?
Yeah, I think anxiety is the number one diagnosed mental disorder in the country right
Wow.
now among 18-year-old and older adults. It surpassed depression, so it's a big deal. And there are a lot of expressions of how a mental disorder of anxiety can be expressed. Now, not all anxiety is a disorder.
Sure.
A lot of us don't have the mental disorder of anxiety. But when it does, it's usually when it starts to get in the way with our normal living. Like, I can't seem to get past it. I can't seem to quit stopping. I can't seem to move beyond it. It's taking my sleep. It's robbing my joy. I can't do my normal stuff.
Yeah,
I feel
debilitating.
captive. Yeah, it's debilitating. And so when that happens, that's usually a sign, ooh, I need some help. I had that happen years ago. Had it happen where I felt stuck and I was depressed, diagnosed with depression. Anxiety was a companion to that. And I started feeling all kinds of fear and started having panic attacks. And it came from a lifetime of running from things, of not dealing with internal things that I needed to face inside of me.
Yeah.
And thinking I could that's not an issue. Just telling myself it's not a big deal, when actually it was. And it did damage, it did harm. And so meeting with a Christian therapist that I trusted, taking some really good medication that helped. I opened myself up to deep friendships of a few people, because I couldn't do a lot of people, but a couple people where I could be vulnerable. God starts to do a healing inside of me through all of that kind of stuff. Beyond what he does through his word, through his spirit directly. That's all part of God's healing. And I experienced healing and freedom from that. But it felt like when I was going through it, I'm stuck here. I'm never going to get out of this. And so for me, it became a disorder when I just couldn't cope with it. I couldn't, happen. And it is a very scary feeling to feel like that.
Yeah. I remember a conversation that we had a long time ago about medication in this area, because sometimes it can be stigmatized. I think you talked about glasses and how if you have a hard time seeing, there's no shame in wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And a medicine for you kind of gave you a little bit of traction to give you enough clear thinking to actually be able to experience deeper healing in this area.
Yeah, to go to the places I needed to go to, that I couldn't even get clarity to go to until I'd had some medication. And it's not forever, and it's not for everyone, but having somebody who's skilled and clinically and a solid Christian therapist, a good doctor, you need some help. And there's no shame in that game, asking for help.
And so as we come to the end, what can that healing process then look like?
Yeah, the healing process is kind of like, I go to 1 John 4:15, where he's talking about this love relationship with Jesus, and he says, we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence. That relationship with Jesus, that relationship with God our Father, is a safe space for us. And it doesn't mean that everything automatically is fixed or goes away, but it means it's a safe place where I can experience what I need to experience. For me, that safe place was in the context of these dear friends. The safe place was created in some sense with the help of some medication and therapy. But in that space, I could slow down and start to process some things. And in fact, the pathway to healing actually is counterintuitive. The thing we don't want to do is slow down. When we're struggling with anxiety, I mean, we just don't want, we're reactive, moving fast. We're not even aware of how shallow we're breathing. So the psalmist says, be still and know that I'm God. And so the idea of practicing calm and stillness is a really powerful thing. Again, when we're in the throes of anxious thoughts, that sounds really pie in the sky. But there are ways to do that. And for me, breathing is one of those. I mean, breathing's not optional. We all have to do it. But one of the things, I just had it happen this week in preparation for our conversation. I was having some stuff happening, and I thought, what is going on? Am I having a heart attack? And I was talking with Suze about it and realized, oh, that's just anxiety. So I was kind of getting tested in something that I was about to talk about.
Yeah.
And so slow breathing, like a 5 count in, 5 count out, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and doing that just really slow. And just what that does is putting us back into that awareness of our presence with God. Saying scripture, sometimes I'll breathe. Sometimes it's just simple word like Jesus or peace or come in, Jesus, things like that, that I can just on a breath in and a breath on an inhale and an exhale. And honestly, those kinds of practices take me to a place of calm and centeredness and focus that I can kind of think clearly again. Like I'm clear. I'm not panicky.
Right. Like Jesus in the garden making the decision to obey his Father.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that combination. And even it can take me to, like it did the other night, then Suze, I can express to Suze what's going on and say, this is what's happening. When I say it out loud, it's kind of like confession. It's lifted off my shoulders. Oh, it's just anxiety.
Right.
It kind of puts it in its place. Yeah.
Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground, fear being a natural emotion, anxiety being something that many of us deal with, and through counseling and potentially medication, but for everyone, close community with others, confessing, and then trying to become present to what God has to say to us in those moments. Are some initial pathways to healing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for being here today. I know that this was helpful for me. I know it'll be helpful for the rest of our church, so I appreciate you being here.
Oh, I'm glad to do it. Thanks for the invite.